not doing anything. It's not like the previous Congresses, trust me. That's why people have such a low esteem of those of us who say, well, I'm Congressman so-and-so. People on the street don't buy that. They don't see the action. So I'm done. I know I've exhausted my time. Mr. Parnas, a couple quick questions, and I'll let you go. Is it your understanding that Rudy Giuliani worked for an individual identified by the Trump administration as a Russian agent?
Yes.
Do you know what these Russian line actors were trying to do? Quickly.
Push a conspiracy theory about the Bidens.
Did you know that? Did you warn Rudy Giuliani?
Yes, I did.
And what was his response, succinctly?
He told me that he agreed with me, but then proceeded to work with these people behind my back.
And these people have been identified as Russian agents?
Yes, sir.
And we've got a meeting here of Mr. Giuliani with one of those. I'm disgusted, as most people are, about this process. And the only way we get to a point where we get things done is that we learn to talk to one another across the aisle without having another conspiracy theory after another one after another one. You don't buy trust that way. You buy contempt. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Lisa McClain for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by saying I think most Americans are taught at a very young age that you are who you surround yourself with. I think keep that in a premise. As I sat here and listened to everyone talk about how Hunter Biden is just this golden boy. I mean, are we really supposed to believe that Hunter Biden is the golden boy? His associates, such as Jason Galanis and Devin Archer, are felons convicted of fraud, yet he is the golden child. I want to talk about examples of Biden's influence peddling scheme. This time, it was Romania. It follows the same general pattern as we have seen with other countries like China, Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. Here's the pattern. It's really simple. A corrupt foreign oligarch needs access to the U.S. government. Hunter Biden sells influence to the U.S. government. The oligarchs pay up. So let's just take a deeper dive into this Romanian scheme. Mr. Bobulinski, who is Gabriel Popovich?
Gabriel Popovich is a businessman from Romania, probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars, I'd envision.
Okay. Is it true that Gabriel Popovich faced corruption charges in Romania in 2015?
It is.
Thank you. And when you were in Europe with the Bidens to close on that CEFC deal with the Chinese, you separately negotiated with Popovich to get a 17th payment. Is that also correct?
I did.
Okay. But Popovich did not want to pay him. Is that correct?
Correct. You're talking about a 17th payment that would go to Rob Walker, and then Rob Walker would distribute to Hunter Biden.
That is correct. And is it because Hunter Biden had failed in the work he was engaged by Popovich to do, which was to get the corruption charges dismissed by the Romanian authorities? Isn't that correct?
Well, it's two things, that they had failed to do that, but also that Joe Biden had left the White House at that point.
Okay, so there's a dot. So I get 16 payments while Joe Biden's in the White House.
Correct.
But after Joe Biden leaves the White House, coincidentally, the payments stop.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that we can connect the dots very simply.
But obviously wasn't a coincidence.
Right, I'm not much for coincidences, which neither are the American people. But, Mr. Bobulinski, what do you think Popovich wanted Hunter Biden to do?
I don't have to think, because Gabriel told me personally he expected, and didn't want the details, he expected Hunter Biden, Rob Walker, and James Gillier to do whatever was necessary to impact his case in Romania.
How do you know that?
Because Gabriel Popovich told me that.
From his mouth?
Yes.
Okay, so there's another dot that we can connect. Would that be a conspiracy theory?
That's not a conspiracy theory.
Okay, thank you.
I would encourage you to interview Gabriel Popovich.
Thank you. Lastly, after claiming he wanted a public hearing, Hunter Biden decided to skip today. Why do you think he skipped the hearing today?
Is that a rhetorical or serious? Well, I don't think he wanted to sit next to me because obviously I've emphatically stated he perjured himself in his transcribed interview with the committee, as did his uncle, Jim Biden. And for every fact he claims or wants to say I was high on drugs or obfuscate, I can show a document, a text message, a recording that is confirmed that he's lying.
Well, let's not let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? Here are the facts.
Highly disappointing that he's not here, though.
I would agree. Here are the facts. Hunter Biden was engaged by a foreign principal, Gabriel Popovich. It is well known that Hunter Biden met with the ambassador to Romania, Hans Klem, in November of 2015. Hunter Biden was not registered under FARA. He stopped getting paid as soon as his father leaves office until you got Popovich to send Hunter Biden one more payment. Seriously, what services was Hunter Biden providing to the Romanian oligarchs for millions of dollars? We've yet to hear it. As far as the committee knows, Hunter Biden was never registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. If the Department of Justice applied the same standards it did in the Paul Manafort case, Hunter would be in more trouble than he is already in. Mr. Chairman, there are real FARA issues here that we need to continue to look at. And with that, I thank you for being here, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good job. Chair now recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bobulinski, I heard your opening statement. It's submitted to the record, part of our proceedings. I have a quick question. Simple. Is it your testimony today that you personally witnessed President Joe Biden commit a crime?
I believe the fact that he was sitting with me while I was putting together a business deal.
Did you witness the president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes.
And what crime have you witnessed?
How much time do I have to go through it?
It is simple. You name the crime. Did you watch him steal something?
Corruption statutes, RICO and conspiracy.
What is the crime, sir? Specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption statutes.
Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime. It is a category. What is the
It's a category of crimes that you're then charged
You
under
have charges.
A long 100
You
list
have
of
charges. Sir, please
Want me to name the exact statute
Sir,
under RICO?
yes.
Well, it's funny. In this committee room, everyone's not here. There's over 18
All right, sir, I reclaim my
lawyers
time.
that went to law school.
I
I'll leave
reclaim
it
my
up to
time.
you guys
Okay,
to
thank
define
you,
the
sir. I
statute
reclaim my
under
time.
RICO.
Clearly, what we are seeing here today is a continuation of the 15-month saga of the Republican majority lost in the desert. Impeachment 101. The majority party, or whomever is raising impeachment, must accuse the president of a high crime, a specific high crime or misdemeanor. I would like to submit to the record HRES 918, the House resolution to open this impeachment inquiry.
Without objection to order.
This resolution does not outline a high crime or misdemeanor. It's not here. Now, when we compare the chairman's opening from his previous opening, he's talking about Ukraine and Burisma and all of this. This entire inquiry is based on a blockbuster piece of information that was in a classified SCIF room. And inside that room was a document alleging President Biden directly of a $10 million bribery scheme, a $10 million bribery scheme, extremely serious. What happened? What happened a month ago, Mr. Chairman? That document, the FBI arrested the person who offered those allegations for falsifying his testimony to the FBI. This entire impeachment inquiry is based on an actual, provable individual who has lied Now, responsible leadership would withdraw an inquiry based on that. Withdraw it. Instead, what we are seeing is that this committee was warned about the falsehoods of these allegations long before that, warned by Trump's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and yet they proceeded anyway. The chairman proceeded anyway. This committee was warned by Rudy Giuliani associate right here, Lev Parnas, after that document about the falsehoods of this. Then held hearings where your own expert witnesses said that there was no grounds for impeachment, and you proceeded anyway. And finally, as if none of this was enough, the FBI arrested the individual who was the source of the entire, to quote the chairman, heart of the matter to launch this impeachment inquiry, and proceeded anyway. At this point, the story is not the fact that the basis of this impeachment inquiry is wrong. The story is why it's proceeding anyway. Why is this committee proceeding based on false charges? And by the way, no charges. I have yet to hear in the chairman's opening the allegation that they are specifically charging the President of the United States with. I'm hearing about Biden family. I'm hearing about this and that. I am not hearing the specific allegation by this committee. What is it? It's not here, and that is the problem. The story is when this committee knew that they were working with falsified evidence. That's the story. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On March 1st, 2024, Joe Biden stated he did not interact with Hunter or Jim Biden business associates. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into a record New York Post article. Biden insists he did not interact with his
Without objection to order.
We're going to go fast here. I have strictly yes or no questions. On that note, the New York Post article, Joe Biden also said, read the record of every single witness. So I did. I first read Devin Archer's deposition, and he interacted with Joe Biden. Then I read the transcripts of Rob Walker, Eric Schwerin, George Burgess, Kevin Morris, Tony Bobulinski, and Jason Galanis. And every single one of them interacted with Joe Biden. And that's just the people we interviewed. Mr. Galanis, my first questions are for you. Did Hunter Biden call Joe Biden with Elena Badarina on the line on May 4th, 2014, yes or no?
Yes.
In that call, did Hunter Biden state on this call with Joe Biden that everything is good and we're moving forward?
Yes, he did.
Okay, on the same call, did Joe Biden in the call was saying, okay, then you be good to my boy?
Yes, he said that as well.
Okay, did Badarina agree to put $20 million into one of Hunter Biden's business projects days later after this phone call?
Yes.
Okay, did Hunter Biden ever take a call from Joe Biden while at the Peninsula Bar in New York?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Did Hunter Biden ever take a call from Joe Biden while at the Peninsula Bar in New York?
Yes, he did.
During this call, did Hunter Biden update Joe Biden on progress in landing a business partnership with Harvest Fund Management?
Yes.
Okay. Was Harvest a $300 billion Chinese financial services company closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Is Hunter Biden involved with Harvest?
Hunter Biden is involved in Harvest in two ways, through BHR, which is a fund
yes or
that
no? Was Hunter
Biden
involved with Harvest? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. As part of the deal,
extensive emails to that effect.
As part of the deal, did Hunter Biden want the company to reserve a board seat for Joe Biden?
Yes.
Okay. Did Henry Zhao, a Chinese businessman, want assurances Joe Biden would join the board? Yes or no?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Did
He's
Hunter
expressed
Biden?
that in emails as well.
Okay, thank you.
And
Did Hunter Biden draft an email stating, please also remind Henry Zhao of our conversation about a board seat for a certain relation of mine. Devin and I golfed with that relation earlier this week, and we discussed this very idea again. And as always, he remains very, very keen on the opportunity. Here is a photo of Joe Biden and Devin Archer and Hunter Biden golfing days before the alleged email draft. Do you believe a certain relation of mine refers to Joe Biden?
I don't think there's any question. It was based on first-hand conversations with Devin Archer, who was in that picture and at that golf meeting.
Did you ever meet with Devin Archer where Hunter took calls from his father?
Yes.
Okay, during one of these phone calls, did Hunter Biden tell Joe Biden that he and Henry Zhao needed help getting, quote, getting across the finish line?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Mr. Bobolinsky, do you recall receiving an email that floated the possibility of giving 10% ownership of Sinohawk to Joe Biden through Hunter Biden?
Yes.
Okay, my last questions are for both of you very quickly. Mr. Bobolinsky and Mr. Galanis, you both stated you were told not to use Joe Biden's name in communications, correct, Mr. Bobolinsky?
Correct.
Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
Okay. Did Joe Biden participate in phone conversations and meetings with Hunter Biden, his business associates, and foreign interests, yes or no? Mr. Bobolinsky?
He clearly did. He
Okay, Mr. Galanis, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. In Hunter Biden's deposition, he said he did not involve his father in his business. Did Hunter Biden lie under oath, yes or no? Mr. Bobolinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis?
If that's what he said, yes, that would be
Okay.
true.
Is Joe Biden lying when he says he did not interact with Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, their business partners, or forward interests? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
All right. In a debate on October 22nd, 2020, Joe Biden denied Hunter Biden made money from China. Then Hunter Biden, his business associates, and foreign interests include money from Chinese businesses, business partners, and/or interests. Yes or no? Mr. Bobolinsky?
I'm sorry. Did the
Did Hunter
Biden
Biden
family make
receive
money?
from Chinese
Correct.
business
Yes.
interests? Mr. Galanis? Did Hunter Biden receive money from Chinese business interests? Yes or no?
Yes, he was.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
he had economic interest, and yes.
All right. Joe Biden
Yes,
has
regardless.
repeatedly claimed that he was not involved in Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, or any other Biden family business deals. Today, our witnesses have proved otherwise. Today, we've established Joe Biden lied about interacting with Hunter Biden's business associates. It is my belief Joe Biden is the closer for Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and their business associates and foreign interests. Good luck to the left proving otherwise. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Porter from California.
The title of this hearing is Influence Peddling, Examining Joe Biden's Abuse of Public Office. Look, the impeachment inquiry is dead. If it was on life support, my colleague Ocasio-Cortez just killed it. There is no allegation of a specific crime. President Biden didn't do anything wrong. There's zero evidence of that. And still, both Democrats and Republicans and the media treat these hearings like the Super Bowl. But no one ever wins, and Americans always lose. So I've got a fresh direction for this hearing. All we have to do is cross off the part after the colon. There, just influence peddling. We should have a policy discussion about how to stop government officials from using their positions to get money or favors. Now, that is a real hearing, one that nearly every American, regardless of party, wants us to hold. We could start by talking about how senior executive branch officials can leave public service, wait just 1 year, and then legally become lobbyists for big corporations, scoring their new employers profitable government contracts and favorable regulations. They can even be paid by the big corporations during that short 1 year while they are waiting to become lobbyists as a down payment for their future ability to peddle influence. That's wrong. For the panel of witnesses, by show of hands, as Americans, would our witnesses support extending this 1 year waiting period to at least 2 years?
No, I would.
Okay, so there we go. Republicans, Democrats, even convicted criminals, everybody supports that we should do more to stop influence peddling. This is the kind of good government reform that Americans of all political stripes support. And I should know, in 2022, I passed that exact reform as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act with a bipartisan majority vote. What happened to that amendment? Why didn't it become law? The answer is simple. Nearly 500 former members of Congress worked for lobbying firms. And too many people around here want to follow in their footsteps, and so don't want to make it harder for government officials to become lobbyists. Ultimately, Democratic leadership under then Speaker Nancy Pelosi let the amendment get stripped out of the final bill. When I offered up the amendment again during this Congress, Republican leadership under then Speaker Kevin McCarthy never even put the amendment up for a vote. Both parties have let us down on fighting influence peddling and tackling corruption. But I'm hopeful we can begin a new approach in this very committee. The American people should know that regardless of party, should know that an investigation was conducted into whether Joe Biden did anything wrong. We followed the evidence to where it led a dead end. So this impeachment inquiry should end today. And where should we go from here? We should stop partisan attacks on each other and address the real problem. That the American people believe that the rules that prevent corruption are way too weak. To stop politicians on both sides of the aisle from influence peddling. This committee should be working together in a bipartisan way to change the culture of Congress, to crack down on influence peddling and corruption, and just as importantly, to stop the perception of it. Let me give you some facts. I don't even need a whiteboard for this one. 495 former members of Congress work for lobbying firms. 467 members of Congress take corporate PAC money. 78 members of Congress violated the Stock Act last Congress. Clearly, we have our work cut out for us. So let's start the conversation today on what a bipartisan ethics reform package could look like. Here are the organizations that could have come today as witnesses so we could have had a productive conversation. Oversight staff, do you have your notebooks ready? Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, Common Cause, Project on Government Oversight, Public Citizen. With the right witnesses and the commitment to doing what the American people want, this committee can have a real conversation about the problem of influence peddling, and we can pass legislation to create badly needed ethics guardrails. That would be real work, not a real circus. I yield back.
Before I recognize Mr. Timmons, Ms. Porter, I think you are sincere, and I look forward to working with you on that legislation.
Chairman, can we take a 5-minute break? I need to go to the bathroom.
Let us get one more, and then we'll do that. Chair recognizes Mr. Timmons for 5 minutes, then we'll take a break because we have votes coming up anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our hearing last July, I laid out the scheme that the Bidens concocted to sell the Biden brand, netting almost $30 million for various members of the Biden family. This scheme was repeated with various clients in Kazakhstan, China, Romania, Russia, and Ukraine. I'm going to spend my time on just one instance, Ukraine, specifically involving Burisma, which netted Hunter over $3 million during a 3-year period. And to clarify the criminal offenses being alleged, for Hunter Biden, it's conspiracy to commit bribery, 18 U.S.C. Section 201 B, 2A, and C. And for Joe Biden, it's conspiracy to commit extortion under color of official right, 18 U.S.C. Section 1951 B, 2. And if you want a refresher on those, just look up Senator Menendez and his wife's indictment. So let's start with this. Foreign client has a problem. I've got an email here from Vadim Pizarski, the Secretary of Burisma. And he is advocating that Hunter Biden intervene with high-level U.S. officials to facilitate meetings and communications expressing their positive opinion of Zlochevsky, the president of Burisma, to the Ukrainian president, chief of staff, prosecutor general, with the ultimate purpose to close down any cases against Zlochevsky in Ukraine. This is dated November 2nd. Now, keep in mind, and again, foreign client has a problem. Zlochevsky is being investigated by Viktor Shokin, the Inspector General of Ukraine, and he needs help, the Biden brand. So here we got bank records galore of Hunter Biden receiving, prior to this email, over $1 million. After this email, $2 million. You'll find out in a second he really earned his fee. So again, client pays a Biden $3 million. Next, what happens? What happens? This is great. 11 days later, we have the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine announcing that Vice President Biden is traveling to Ukraine on December 7th. Oh, interesting. Vice President Biden travels to the country. Here we got a great photo of him touching down. They're very proud of themselves. So Vice President Biden leverages U.S. policy to achieve a favorable outcome for the client. We've all seen the video. He brags about leveraging U.S. foreign loan guarantees to get the Ukrainian government to fire Viktor Shokin to end the investigation. Again, we've got the email from Podarsky saying that we need to leverage you, who have not provided value yet for your $1 million in service, Hunter. He brings in the big guy. Biden leverages U.S. influence, withholds $1 billion in loan guarantee to fire Shokin. So if that's not enough, we got the victory lap here. We got an email just a few months later saying, whoa, we won in less than a year. You brought us in, so take a victory lap. So look, I mean, this is straightforward. This is straightforward. Pay to play. It is bribery. Hunter Biden was paid $3 million at the lowest point in his life. He testified in the deposition that he was drug addicted, that he's never been to Ukraine. Yet he's paid $3 million to get his father to go to solve his client's problem. That is the scheme. Mr. Bobulinski, does this sound like the scheme that you've seen the Biden family do?
I wasn't involved in Ukraine, but the facts surrounding this are very similar to CFC and Romania.
Thank you for that. So this is the thing. If Hunter Biden were here, we would be able to ask him some questions, maybe clear this up. But he's not. He's not here. And what's interesting is that just yesterday, Peter Navarro reported to federal prison in Miami for 4 months for not showing up in front of the January 6th committee. And I want to point out to everybody that the January 6th committee was procedurally defective under House rules. It was procedurally defective because the minority leader did not get to appoint members to that committee. The United States House of Representatives Oversight and Accountability Committee is a procedurally perfect committee. And we have authority to subpoena Hunter Biden, and he has to show up. He has to answer these questions, and he has to tell the world that his father didn't leverage U.S. foreign policy so he would get $3 million. This is no different than what Senator Menendez did. And look, the American people are not buying this nonsense y'all are selling. We have to restore, we must restore their faith in our institutions. And we have to stop this ridiculous two-tiered system of justice where the Department of Justice persecutes President Trump and hides Hunter Biden behind every corner. I mean, this is not the United States of America that the American people deserve. And we have to get our country back on track. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry. Did the committee subpoena Hunter Biden today?
Chair recognizes, pursuant to the previous order and at the request of the minority witness, the chair declares the committee in recess for 10 minutes. Then we're going to come back in here, and then we may have to recess again for votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing is another unfortunate attempt by my Republican colleagues to muddy the water in an election year with no proof, no evidence, no wrongdoing at all by President Biden. The American people are tired of this charade. As I said before, my Republican colleagues simply grasp at straws that do not exist. While House Democrats in the Biden-Harris administration work to cut costs of prescription drugs, expand student loan forgiveness, and mitigate the threat of gun violence, Republican members of Congress continue to chase after Russian disinformation campaigns from the 2020 election, which have been thoroughly debunked again and again. And as usual, in this committee, we know who is in charge. It is the bondless, broke bluffer, twice impeached, 4 times indicted, insurrection initiator, election denying, self-declared dictator on day one, and puppet for Putin. The one who wants to terminate the Constitution and defund the FBI. The one who romanticized exchanging of love letters with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. The one who just last week embraced autocrat Orban of Hungary to discuss their diabolical plans to destroy our democracy. The one who proposed a policy to ban Muslims from this country. The one who just this week said any Jewish person who votes for a Democrat hates their religion and Israel. The one who called neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches chanting Jews will not replace replace us, good people. The one who referred to African nations as, I quote, shithole countries. The one who called NFL players, the majority whom are black, sons of bitches for taking a knee in protest of the ever-present racial inequality and police brutality that continues to pervade our justice system. The one who called Mexicans rapists and promised to build a wall and have them pay for it, and in case you missed it, it didn't happen. The one who told women of color from born in the United States, elected to Congress and serving on this very committee, to go back to their own countries. The one who bragged about grabbing women by their private parts. The one who confused his rape victim, whom he claimed was not his type, for his very own ex-wife. The one who is an admitted and committed adulterer who attempted to pay off a porn star for her silence. The one who has publicly mocked people with disabilities. The one who dodged the draft and referred to prisoners of war as losers, the very people who pay a high price so we could enjoy the freedoms that far too many of us take for granted. The one who boasted about being able to stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue to shoot someone and not lose votes. The one who promoted political and physical violence multiple times, including most recently at my rally in my home state of Ohio, where he declared there would be a bloodbath if he didn't win. The one who intentionally denied COVID was deadly and eventually suggested injecting bleach into our bodies to kill the respiratory virus that took the lives of 1 million people in the United States. The one who ordered his son-in-law get top secret security clearance, overruling concerns flagged by intelligence officials, who, according to this committee's chairman, admitted the former president's son-in-law crossed the line of ethics by accepting a $2 billion investment into that very same son-in-law's fledgling firm only 6 months after leaving the White House. If any of this sounds crazy, it's because it is. This might sound unbelievable, but it's all true. These are facts. Indisputable facts, a thing that is known and proven to be true. This may be a foreign concept to some of my colleagues, but for those of us who still have a relationship with the truth, please know this is not an exhaustive list of inappropriate, unethical, and questionable behavior by the maniacal manipulator of Mar-a-Lago, because I could go on, but I only have 5 minutes. Yet here we are again, trying to make sense out of nonsense. I would humbly, respectfully ask my Republican colleagues on this committee to stop falling over yourselves to win the approval of one, because millions of people are depending on you to defend our delicate democracy. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time to
Chair now.
The ranking member.
7 seconds.
Oh, I don't know that there's much time left, but thank you for that eloquent and compressed recitation of some of what we've lived with over the last few years.
Chair recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas for 5 minutes.
Mr. Bobolinsky, I want to talk about May of 2017. To be clear, Hunter Biden was doing business with CEFC while his dad was VP. Are you aware of that now? Yes. Rob Walker told us that during his transcribed interview before the committee. But I want to talk to you about your meeting with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and Jim Biden in May of 2017. Other members are going to bring up the meeting you had with Joe Biden at the Beverly Hilton the night before the Milken Conference, but I want to talk about the next day when you went as Joe Biden's guest to the Milken Conference. So, you watched Joe Biden deliver a speech that day. Then you had a follow-up conversation with Joe Biden. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
What did Joe Biden tell you during that conversation?
Well, as I've already publicly shared, I was brought backstage by his team because he had just given his keynote, and we just exchanged pleasantries, and then I walked him out to his car, and he specifically thanked me for the work I was doing with his son and his brother and asked me to keep an eye on them.
And my understanding is, Mr. Bobolinsky, that after Joe Biden had left, you went across the street to the Peninsula Hotel and had a long conversation with his brother, Jim Biden. Isn't that correct?
I did.
It's my understanding that you asked him how the Biden family does the business that they do, while Joe Biden is such a prominent political figure. What was Jim Biden's response to you?
Correct. I was actually concerned and asking from a position of concern, and Jim Biden's response to me was plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. And by that you mean Joe Biden would be kept in the loop, but you weren't supposed to talk about it, especially in writing. Mr. Galanis, During your transcribed interview with the committees, you said a very interesting phrase. Say it, forget it, write it, regret it. Does this sound familiar? Is this consistent with your understanding of how the Bidens do business, Mr. Galanis?
Yeah, very, very much so. That was an operating principle, yes.
But it looks like someone made a mistake. Mr. Bobulinski, you created 2 companies with the Bidens. I want to show you an infamous email discussion.
तो समर हीट कैसी लग रही है? मत पूछ, इससे बचकर कहाँ जाऊँ? टाइम जोन, क्योंकि वही है साल का कूलेस्ट ऑफर। टाइम जोन लाया है सबसे बड़ा $1 ऑफर। हर कार्ड के रिचार्ज पर पाइए 2 गुना अधिक बोनस। 24 से 26 में विजिट करें नियरेस्ट टाइम जोन। ये ऑफर टाइम जोन फन ऐप पर भी। TNC अप्लाई।
The say it, forget it, write it, regret it rule of the Biden family businesses, and now they are trying to cover it up. Joe Biden said repeatedly that his family never made a dime from China. But Mr. Bobulinski just confirmed that Hunter, Jim, and the big guy himself all got a cut from the CEFC China energy deal. Let me be clear. The only service the Biden family ever provided was their ability to leverage the office of the Vice President of the United States to cash in overseas. My Democrat colleagues are going to try and tell you that Joe Biden wasn't on the final ownership structure agreement. But isn't it true? If someone was holding Joe Biden's stake in the company, it wouldn't appear in the document. Isn't that the whole point of this email, to hold Joe Biden's stake so his name wouldn't be in the document? Isn't this just plausible deniability in action, Mr. Bobulinski?
It appears that way.
But plausible deniability only gets you so far. Now, I want to fast forward from May to the end of July of 2017 when the Bidens cut you out of the deal. I want to show you a message that Hunter sent to his Chinese business partners. Please put it up on the screen. Hunter writes, quote, I am sitting here with my father and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. So, when Hunter Biden is desperate for money, Jim Biden's old trick of plausible deniability doesn't cut it. And when desperate times call for desperate measures, Hunter Biden let the cat out of the bag, said the quiet part out loud, and gave the game away by calling on his father to help him shake down his Chinese business partners for the money. And it worked. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of inquiry. What was the last image we saw that you put up? Where did that come from? I just want to authenticate that.
This is the Ways and Means Committee Exhibit 300.
Must be the Irish whistleblower note. All right. Not an inquiry, though. Anyway, Chair recognizes Ms. Stansbury for the last question.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the GOP's day-long campaign for Donald Trump. I want to start with Mr. Galanis to help connect some dots that have not yet been connected in this hearing. Mr. Galanis, you are serving just under 16 years for, among other things, as was been said today, defrauding a tribal nation and specifically a tribal corporation held by the Ogallala Sioux, which is why you are testifying from a prison today. But I'd like to ask you, Mr. Galanis, have you had an attorney representing you before this committee that you retained last December? And that attorney's name is Mr. Mark Paoletta, correct?
That's correct.
And when you first testified before this committee in a taped interview, you were actually stopped by Mr. Paoletta from answering just a simple question about how you met him and who exactly was paying your legal fees. Now, I want to make sure that the American people understand exactly who Mr. Paoletta is, because he is, in fact, a former lawyer to Donald Trump who served in the administration in the Office of Management and Budget and was at the center of the Ukrainian pressure campaign for which Donald Trump was impeached. And in fact, Mr. Paoletta was Trump's chief OMB lawyer when he withheld aid to Ukraine to try to extort the Ukrainian government into investigating Joe Biden to support Donald Trump's campaign. And Mr. Paoletta literally wrote the memo to help withhold those funds. Now, I want to dig in a little bit on this pressure campaign, and Mr. Lev Parnas is here to discuss as an eyewitness who was there. Mr. Parnas, we appreciate you being here, and I want to move through this quickly, so just ask for simple yes and no answers. You've testified here today that Donald Trump repeatedly asked you, and through Rudy Giuliani, to put pressure on the Ukrainian government to dig up dirt on Joe Biden to support Trump's campaign, correct?
100% yes.
And as we can see here in this picture, you were very much a business associate of Rudy Giuliani during this time. And as established in your testimony, you traveled to and met with Ukrainian officials and told them that the White House would withhold its support and aid to Ukraine if it did not cooperate with this bribery, essentially.
That's correct.
And as we all know, Donald Trump's administration, and specifically the Office of Management and Budget, did withhold that foreign aid in 2019. And here's the guy who did it. And he's representing the witness who's literally on Zoom with us for this committee today. And it's the reason why Donald Trump was impeached the first time. And the man at the center of that scheme is involved in the House GOP's inquiry. But I also want to point out that Mr. Paoletta is also involved in and very much in bed with the Thomases. In fact, he represented Miss Jenny Thomas, Clarence Thomas's wife, in her involvement in the Stop the Steal before the January 6th committee, and actually also goes on vacation with Mr. Harlan Crow and the Thomases. So this man has quite an interesting roster and participation in this hearing. But the bigger picture here is that Mr. Paoletta's presence is yet another indication of the way in which this hearing and this impeachment inquiry is part of Donald Trump's larger misinformation campaign, just like it was in 2020, where in addition to pressuring and withholding aid to Ukraine, Rudy Giuliani and the Trump Organization, as Mr. Parnas has established, planted the story in the media. And now here we are 4 years later as they've dredged it back up and are planting it back in the media, using Congress, using this committee, and using a baseless impeachment supported by Donald Trump's own allies on this committee to push that information out. As members on this committee have trafficked in false evidence that was planted by a Russian operative to the FBI and is now in jail for that. All of this is in the service of propping up the criminal enterprise for which Donald Trump is at the top and has already been twice impeached. Rudy Giuliani and others have been exposed as they continue to traffic in Russian disinformation that not only props up Donald Trump, but it props up Vladimir Putin himself and his goals back in Russia and in Ukraine. So I just want to point out here that once again, as I said when we had a false impeachment hearing a few months ago, that once again we see the
time's expired, gentlelady's time's expired,
little hands of Donald Trump all over this hearing.
And just want to state, you made a mistake and said that Mr. Parnas was a Republican witness. He is very much your witness, not a Republican witness.
But I was a Republican for Donald Trump.
Mr. Chairman, I did not believe I said that, so we can...
Pursuant to the previous order, the chair declares the committee in recess due to votes. Subject to the call of the chair, we will reconvene 10 minutes after the 3 votes. All right, committee will reconvene. Chair now recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galanis, I'm going to turn my questions to you. I hope I can see you on the screen here shortly. Are you there, Mr. Galanis? There you are. Okay. If we can jump right into another Biden-Chinese deal made while Joe Biden was in office, a deal I think you described in your interview as a quid pro quo, where the Chinese sent millions in exchange for a post-VP job for President Biden. Can you tell us what was Burnham?
Yeah, so Burnham was an 85-year-old financial services company based in New York that owned an asset management firm and a securities dealer. But relative to the Chinese, it was an unimportant, small player. I'll give you scale, $1.5 billion versus $300 billion Chinese company.
So what was Hunter Biden's interest in working with them, knowing that that was the situation? I
think Hunter Biden was already working with them through the fund that was created. The BHR, Harvest was the H, and is described in some of Hunter's emails that I have provided to the committee. He described the activity with BHR, meaning the Harvest activity, as one of his only focuses, and his other focus would be the activity between Harvest directly and Burnham directly in a combination. So his stated objective, in his own words, in writing, was those were to be his only focus, his only priority in working with the Chinese on a go-forward basis.
Did you also say that he said the interest in working with Burnham was to make billions instead of millions? Is that right?
Yeah, I did say that, and that was on the basis of looking to become a much larger company where his equity interest would be worth a lot of money, billions, not millions.
And you said the Harvest Fund was a $300 billion Chinese financial services company. Was it likely connected, or was it connected closely to the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And who was Henry Zhao?
He's been described to me consistently by Devin and Hunter as the chairman, but he's essentially the head of Harvest. I think he's had a couple of different roles over the years, but chairman is the best way to. He was always characterized as chairman and the decision maker for that entity.
Right. So he's the chairman of the $300 billion Chinese entity connected to the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, and he was based out of where? Where was his base of operations?
In Beijing, China, PRC.
And like you said, you heard him referred to occasionally as Chairman Zhao, right?
Most of the time it was Chairman Zhao out of a sort of a respect for the chairman. Yes.
Okay, so now there came to a point where Hunter wanted to bring Henry Zhao, the chairman of Harvest, and their billions of dollars from China into business with Burnham. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct, Congressman.
And why would he do that?
It was a financial decision. Chinese offered money, and he offered political access.
Okay.
It was in exchange.
Fair enough. It's pretty obvious what Harvest brings, right? $300 billion. But why would Harvest be interested in Burnham versus other financial institutions? I'm sure there are other ones out there, and like you said, it was fairly small. Harvest is $300 billion. Why would they care about this small Burnham? What was the interest for them?
The self-evident answer is the political access, and then sort of underscoring that is there are at least 2 emails produced that talk about exactly that, the influence of what Henry Zhao Hunter had characterized as Henry Zhao's interest in the access vehicle. So that was sort of explicit and in writing.
Okay, so Joe Biden was going to sit on the board of a Chinese company connected to the highest levels of the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party. Stepping back in your dealings with Hunter, what was the value that Hunter brought to the table?
It was the access to the inducement to induce companies like this Harvest Group to participate in Burnham. So it was we'll call it relationship capital that he brought to the table, not financial capital.
Relationship capital,
economic value to the business.
Relationship capital that you described as the Biden lift. What was the Biden lift?
Biden lift was simply Hunter's access to his father and his father's power and prestige in influencing the growth of a financial services business, which was largely reliant on its reputation and ability to attract other clients.
I'm running out of time here, but it sounds like a quid pro quo to me. Sir, what did Harvest did in fact invest money in Burnham? You called it a material inducement. Can you explain what that means? And do you know how much the Chinese paid?
I believe I was out of the picture toward the end of 2015. I believe that they ended up paying $4 million into Burnham. I believe, though, as a result of legal entanglements that I encountered, that the transactions didn't happen in the way people expected or that they had written about in terms of what the Chinese were expected to do.
All right, Mr. Galanis, I just want one last question. I'm going to show you a draft email that you provided to the committee. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Objection on time. Good job. Chair now recognize Ms. Crockett for 1 minute, or 5 minutes.
1 minute. All right. First of all, Mr. Bobulinski, do you know who Elections LLC is? Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's not a who.
Okay. Well, do you know what it is?
Yes, it's a LLC.
Okay. And is it the LLC that your attorney works for?
I believe so, yes.
You believe so. Okay. So at this point in time, I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a document indicating that the law firm representing Tony Bobulinski was paid $10,000 as recently as January of this year by the Save America PAC, which you may recognize as Donald Trump's PAC.
Without objection.
Thank you. Now, so far in this hearing, it has felt like the worst episode of The Apprentice. I'm sure you're familiar with that show. It seems like my colleagues and maybe you and some others are trying to become the next vice president of the United States of America. You're auditioning or something like that because, Mr. Bobulinski, I know that you take exception to the fact that your credibility has been called into question over and over. But when someone comes to testify under oath, whether it's before this committee, behind closed doors, or in person, then we have to evaluate someone's credibility. And, sir, I definitely have always had issues with your credibility, as I know that you are very well aware of. So let me remind you of what happened behind closed doors.
Well, you should ask Ro Khanna about my credibility.
You a question. Okay?
You are?
When I haven't. So when I ask you a question, that's when you answer. Otherwise, I'm talking. So,
excuse me?
With my time, because it's my time, I want to be clear that when we were behind closed doors, you called a number of people liars. You called the Wall Street Journal liars. You called Cassidy Hutchinson a liar. You called the FBI a liar. You called Rob Walker a liar. You called James Gilliar a liar. You called Hunter Biden a liar. You called Jim Biden a liar. And just today, you added to your list, you called my colleague, Congressman Mr. Goldman, a liar as well. It seems like, according to you, the only person that's telling the truth is you and everyone else is lying. But I want to move on to something else.
Is that a question?
It's not a question.
Oh, okay.
You'll know when I ask you a question, I promise.
Thank you.
So the other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that my colleague from the other side of the aisle talked about the company that we keep. And she wanted to go through a list of people that she felt like were bad company because right now the majority has been relying upon the testimony of someone who's currently sitting in federal prison. And we know that your company is the company of somebody who's been found liable of fraud, as well as defamation, as well as sexual assault, and for whatever reason can't pay his bills at this point in time. But I'm going to ask Mr. Parnas, so this is a question to him. Are you aware if Trump had any associates that have been found guilty of anything?
Yes, lots of them.
Lots of them.
Me included.
You included. Okay, so when you were called here to testify, you weren't called here to testify for any other reason than to tell the truth. Is that correct?
Yes, Congresswoman.
Now, we started this whole sham off because of the 1023, and that was debunked by you, was it not?
Yes, Congresswoman.
Way before we started this impeachment inquiry, and you mentioned a number of times this guy by the name of Rudy Giuliani.
Yes.
Now, you know, everybody is so
stressed about the fact that Hunter ain't here today. But you know, Hunter came and testified behind closed doors for over 6 hours. And every single one of them, they weren't limited to 5 minutes. They could ask whatever they wanted to. And there's a full transcript of his testimony. So I don't know what else they wanted to do besides the fact that they wanted to put on a show. But let me tell you something. This whole thing is based upon something that Giuliani came up with.
Yes.
And we tried to subpoena him that's what I remember. If anybody else remember, we asked, we said, hey, we should subpoena Giuliani. But you know, kind of like when we were trying to get his cell phone, they shut it down, right? Like they don't want the facts. But you would agree with me that considering the fact that you were working under Rudy Giuliani at the time that you went over to Ukraine, that he has maybe some valuable information that he could offer this committee as to whether or not there's anything that we should be investigating in the first place.
Absolutely, Congresswoman. I wish that this committee would subpoena Rudy Giuliani, put him under oath alongside me to get to the bottom of the truth of what actually happened in Ukraine and to the manipulation that Trump and Giuliani and the team went to do.
I agree with you, but somehow it doesn't look like we're going to get there, and I thank you for your time. With that, I'll yield.
Time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galanis, on May 9th, 2014, you received an email from Devin Archer confirming, or you wrote an email confirming that Ms. Baturina was investing with Burnham Investments, $15 to $20 million. Is that true?
Yes, Congressman.
And let's talk about the predicate for that. Ms. Baturina is the richest woman in Russia, and you knew her. And were you invited to a party that she attended?
Yes, in Brooklyn, yes.
Let's have the invitation up, please. And here's a copy of the invitation that you received. Is that right?
Don't yet see it, Congressman. I did receive an email invitation, so
yeah,
yes.
An email invitation. And did you go to that party?
Yes, I did attend that party, yes.
And was Hunter Biden at that party?
Yes, he was.
And we know that he was because we have a confirmation of his calendar, which is the next exhibit. It was noted on there, and he showed up there. And so all of that's true. It's all verified right there. And Yelena Baturina and her then husband Yuri, they were at the party, right?
Correct.
With Devin Archer as well?
That's correct.
And during that party, you guys, Hunter pulled you guys, the people we just named, pulled them away from where the party is, and you go to a separate little area where it's quieter because there were over 100 people at that party. Is that true?
That's true, yes.
And all of a sudden, Hunter says, okay, I'm going to make a phone call. He makes a phone call, does he not?
He does.
To whom?
He called his father.
Then Vice President Joe Biden, who was Vice President at the time. What was said on the call, please? Wait a second. Before you tell us, the reason you know it is because he put it on speakerphone, right?
He did. After he said hello, and then he put it on speakerphone, so I was first party to hearing it. And initially,
please sum it up.
I'm sorry, Congressman, I talked over you.
Yeah, please sum up that phone call for us, Mr. Galanis.
Okay, it was a relatively short call, but it was he indicated that our friends had come in from out of town. That then the exchange that testified was related to they were going to proceed. Things were going to proceed. And he said, the vice president had said, "You look after my boy."
And it was 5 days after that party that you received word from Devin that Ms. Baturina was in for $15 to $20 million with you guys, right?
That's correct.
Let's go to a different issue. Let's go to the harvest issue. And I'll just refresh everyone's recollection. When Devin Archer was there, because at that time he had to come in. He came on and we had this great conversation with him. I said, hey, did Hunter ever indicate to you that the Chinese anticipated that after his father was out of office, he might join their company with one of their companies as a paid advisor? Mr. Archer says, did he intimate that? I said, did he indicate that to you? Mr. Archer, I don't recall, but potentially, and I say you don't recall, but it's not new to you. The concept is not new to you. Is that what you're saying? He said, no, it's not new to me. Why wasn't it new to him? Why wasn't it new to him? It wasn't new.
It's because that was...
Yeah, go ahead.
It was an explicit discussion amongst us that was an inducement to the Chinese to invest in the Burnham business. That being the VP's position post his position, official position.
On a board of advisors, paid board of advisors.
Of the Chinese company, Harvest, yes.
And when you say us, who was the us that was discussing that?
What I was referring to in just making that comment was Hunter, Devin, and myself.
Let's go to something else.
There was a broader sort of circulation group about that, and that was reflected in an email from a staff member at the Thornton Group who circulated the draft email that also reflected he had a similar conversation and drafted a letter based on that understanding.
How long have you been incarcerated, Mr. Galanis?
I've been incarcerated for 8 years, Congressman.
And you offered to tell the Southern District of New York and SEC about Hunter Biden's company, Rosemont Seneca Bohai, and they rejected your offer, didn't they?
On multiple occasions, that's correct.
And why do you think they rejected that offer?
Chairman, I think he's over.
Time's expired, but please answer the question. Answer the question.
All I can tell you is what counsel said to me.
Which was?
Okay. Counsel had indicated to me that he had never seen a prosecution reject information, particularly paper-based information, that could have corroborated my verbal statements.
Thank you. My time has expired. Thank you.
Very good. Chair recognizes Ms. Bush for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. St. Louis and I are here today once again to focus on the real issues that affect our communities instead of this partisan circus. Let me start by saying that influence peddling is absolutely a very serious issue, full stop. But we all know the truth. Donald Trump is the quintessential influence peddler in chief. Despite this, for well over a year now, House Republicans have spent dozens of hours of precious committee time hearing testimony from nearly 20 witnesses on their baseless and increasingly embarrassing attempts to link President Biden to actions of his family members and implicate him by association. Even after all this time and effort, they haven't been able to muster up any credible links between the president and his son's business dealings. All they have proven is that they will do whatever it takes, including using their razor-thin majority and chairmanships to waste the people's time. Let's let today's hearing be the final nail in the coffin of this sham impeachment investigation. I urge my Republican colleagues to admit that their quest to impeach the president has completely collapsed. They have fallen short, and with each passing deal, they are losing votes and credibility, even within their own conference. It's time for them to move on. But that's not likely to happen because my Republican colleagues don't care about responsible governance or making people's lives better. They don't have an affirmative agenda. They would rather distract us all with these unfounded accusations against the president. So it's no coincidence that under Republican leadership, 2023 marked the most unproductive year in modern history for Congress. Aside from a failed impeachment investigation, an unprecedented 3-week stint without a speaker, and bringing our country to the brink of a catastrophic government shutdown multiple times, Republicans have done absolutely nothing to demonstrate why they deserve to control any chamber of Congress, let alone the White House, for which their cult leader, a twice impeached, 4 times indicted former president, is running to gain influence and control again. They're just grasping at straws, and it'd be comical if it wasn't leading to real harm and real hurt in our communities. The people of our country are the ones paying the price for their failure to actually govern. Instead of wasting all of our time, our hours and hours going down fake rabbit holes and amplifying baseless conspiracies, we could focus on actual policy. We could focus on substance. We could focus on saving and improving the lives of our constituents. not misusing precious time and resources of this committee. What I'd rather focus on is the people who don't have the money and resources to buy influence, the millions of people in our districts who have been harmed by the ongoing refusal of the federal government to take full responsibility for the Manhattan Project waste and who are still getting sick from exposure to toxic radioactive waste their own government created. It still lingers in communities all across the country, like in St. Louis, Missouri, where proper cleanup still remains undone. I am ranking member on the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Energy Policy, and Regulatory Affairs. I have repeatedly requested a hearing on Manhattan Project waste and its countless victims. I'm still waiting. We could focus on ending the crisis of gun violence in this country. Every day, 327 people are shot in the United States. Every year, 42,654 people die from gun violence. More children die from guns than anything else in this country. Why are we not acting to protect them? How are we not treating this like the public health emergency that it is? We could focus on improving the lives of incarcerated individuals and weaning ourselves off of the carceral state. A currently incarcerated individual is your star witness today. I applaud your inclusivity, and surely if folks convicted of crimes can testify before Congress, they should be allowed to vote. Why not enfranchise them? What about reproductive rights and freedom? We have a public health crisis in this country where millions of people of reproductive age can't get the care that they need. People in St. Louis are being forced to give birth against their will. Republicans need to use abortion care just like the rest of us. Why not meaningfully address this issue? We need to focus on ending the atrocities in Gaza and Israel. Since January, malnutrition in children under 5 has nearly doubled. Global experts warn famine is imminent for 1.1 million people, half the population due to catastrophic food insecurity. Why are we not acting to reinstate UNRWA, prevent famine and the spread of disease, and ending the continued slaughter of Palestinians? We do not have infinite time and resources. I will stop there. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time to Rep. Goldman.
Thank you very much, Ms.
10 seconds.
I want to just point to a photo here. Mr. Bobulinski, you have testified that Cassidy Hutchinson's account that you met Mark Meadows, then Chief of Staff for Donald Trump, at a Trump rally in Georgia behind Secret Service cars. You were wearing a mask.
Time's expired.
Sir, you went over a minute late with Mr. Perry. If we could have a little extra time. If you, the Trump rally that you said...
Time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Sessions for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, could we have some basic equity?
If someone else wants to yield, she had 8 seconds to yield him, and he's got up here with a speech. He's already abused his privilege by making a motion that wasn't even a motion. Chair has ruled. The chair has ruled. The chair has ruled.
What are you afraid of, Mr. Chairman?
Recognize your.
What are you afraid of? Why don't you let me ask the question?
Chair recognizes the gentleman from. Oh, what purpose do you seek recognition, Mr. Biggs?
Unanimous consent to introduce the documents into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here they are. One is the invitation that was mentioned. Another is Hunter Biden's calendar. Another is the email mentioned confirming that Yelena Ballerina was going to invest $10 to $20 million with him. Another one is page 180 of the Galenis interview, page 56 of the transcribed interview of Hunter Biden, and also pages 41 and 42 of the Galenis interview.
Without objection, so ordered into the record. Now, Chair, what purpose do you seek recognition, Mr.
I have a UC motion, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed.
I would like to enter into the record the portion of the Devin Archer transcript where he says that Yelena Ballerina never had any business dealings with Hunter Biden and that money went into their joint account was done by mistake.
By mistake. Okay. Without objection.
And, Mr. Chairman, I have one UC request as well.
Proceed.
This is from Salon Magazine. It's embarrassing. Republicans worry they have 0 accomplishments to run on in elections.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'd first like to enter into the record 302s that were done with Mr. Bobulinski, what's known as Exhibit 400A. Thank you very much. Mr. Bobulinski, thank you for being here. Mr. Parnas, thank you for being here. And those of you who are appearing extraneously on our screen. Mr. Bobulinski, tell me very quickly about the professionalism of the organization that you work for in terms of paychecks, getting paychecks, providing the IRS with documentation of people who were paid out of the organization?
I'm not sure I'm following your question.
Were you ever paid?
I was not.
So you were never paid by this organization?
I was not.
Did you ever receive any enumeration?
When we were in the process of trying to shut down Sinohawk Holdings LLC and Oneida Holdings LLC, I was compensated. It wasn't a compensation, it was a reimbursement of $50,000 of money I'd come out of pocket, traveling around, paying for hotels and stuff like that.
So in other words, people did not get paid, or you didn't get paid that you're aware of. Were you aware that other people were being paid?
The Biden family was paid. Hunter and Jim Biden were clearly paid millions of dollars.
And how would you think that information would be transmitted about them receiving that payment and going to the IRS?
I'm not sure of those specifics. I'm just aware that they received those millions of dollars, obviously based on the brave testimony of Shapley and Ziegler that came public with a bunch of information, and then Senator Johnson and Senator Grassley's report. I never saw, the only bank account I ever saw is the one I set up at JP Morgan for Sinohawk Holdings and Oneida Holdings LLC. JP Morgan was well aware that the Biden family were owners in that business. They authorized it, approved it. And
what Social Security number was utilized to set up that account?
For Sinohawk and Oneida?
Yes.
We had to represent the owners of the underlying entity, so they were aware that Hudson West 4 owned 50% of Sinohawk Holdings, and they provided their information. On the Oneida side, we represented that each of us owned 20%, and I'd have to go back and look. I, as the CEO, probably provided my Social Security number. I'm not sure if we provided Social Security numbers for all 5 members.
And yet
excuse me, tax IDs for their LLC.
Or tax IDs, and yet you never received money except reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses that were related to the business.
Correct, and imagine that $50,000 I was paid was actually from the legal side of Sinohawk Holdings and the Chinese, while the Bidens had defrauded me and were receiving millions of dollars into their own pockets.
Were you aware that they were receiving millions of dollars at the time?
I was not.
Did you spend time with the Department of Justice on this matter?
I did. I had a voluntary interview with the FBI on October 23rd, I believe, 2020.
They approached you or you approached them?
My lawyers coordinated me. I, which is obviously public knowledge, went to the second debate. I flew to D.C. with the intent of sitting in front of Senator Johnson, Senator Grassley, and their committee. And then my lawyers sought counsel, had discussions, and decided it was a better focus of my time to walk voluntarily into the FBI.
So where did you do that?
In Washington, D.C.
Main Justice, Main FBI, or the field office?
I believe it was the leading field office. They didn't want to do it in Main Justice for some their reasons. They decided. I would have gone wherever they asked me to go.
Did they tell you at the time that you were providing information that if you provided information that was not true and correct, that you could be held liable for that under criminal statute?
Yeah, yes, of course. I appreciate you asking that question. I was operated as if I misrepresented, misstated, lied, that I was committing criminal offenses, which I take very seriously based on the fact that I was willing to die for this country. And to just correct Ms. Crockett's statement earlier, I didn't accuse the FBI of lying. I stated in my transcribed interview that the FBI made mistakes in their 302. My lawyers never saw that document after my interview until it was made public to the world.
And then you attempted to correct that 302.
I did.
Is that the same 302 known as Exhibit 400A that I have entered in the record today?
It is.
Do you have any other dispute with that? And have you looked at it? And do you have any other dispute?
Well, there's numerous mistakes in it.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any reason to believe that all of these SAR reports that have come out of banks were all fraud?
Gentleman's time's expired, but he asked a question about the SARS report.
No, I mean, just the number of SARS reports should give every American pause. The average American in this country will never receive a single SAR in their entire life. So for a family or an individual to have over what I've publicly seen, 150 of them, is just extraordinary.
Thank you. I want to thank all the witnesses that are here today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognize Mr. Frost. Or who? I thought you said Frost. Oh, Mr. Kassar. Okay, Frost was next. Kassar.
Thank you, Chairman. And if I could have my full 5 minutes, I'd appreciate that.
Reset the clock for 5 minutes for Mr. Kassar.
Thank you, Chairman. While we clearly disagree on the merits of this meritless investigation, I hope, Chairman, that we can at least come to an agreement on some basics. I believe that